What's the worst defense you've seen someone make in a court? Judge, why are you late? Defendant, my mama didn't wake me up. Judge, how old are you? Defendant, 42. Apostrophe. As a public defender, you're thrown into a lot of shitty cases with little hope of winning, and with very little time to win them. My approach was to make any argument within the ethical rules that govern attorneys, which led me to a hilarious court appearance. My client was charged with possession of marijuana, a misdemeanor first offense that carries no jail time in my state. Client and his friend were smoking in a park. Some citizen reports it to the police, and the cops come and find them in their car after smoking. My client admits to the cop that he was smoking. Obviously I'm thinking he's got no defense here. Other guy admits to smoking and gives the police the weed and pipe from his backpack. The entirety of the evidence was the admission and the physical evidence. So, I argue at trial, bench trial, no jury, with zero expectation of winning, that the state failed to prove my client ever possessed the marijuana. Your Honor, for all we know, the other guy at all times had possession of the marijuana. For all we know, he held the pipe to my client's lips and lit it for him. A discussion amongst myself, the judge, and the prosecutor ensues. Can you smoke marijuana and not be in possession of it? I got the decision a few months later, not guilty. A guy was in court for a DUI, and he insisted on taking the stand when his lawyer advised him not to. Turned out he wanted the judge to know the cop who arrested him was just some rude kid trying to be a big shot, and he wasn't even drunk. He'd only had 2 bottles of wine with dinner. His lawyer interrupted him to try to get him to stop talking, and he told his lawyer to shut up. Then the judge advised him to listen to his lawyer, and he told the judge, I'm not a damn child, don't interrupt me, and the judge just smiled and sat back and said, please, proceed. We all knew it was over for this guy. He got maximumed on the charge and advised in the future, if he was going to pay for a lawyer, he should listen to him. I was the bailiff on a kidnap/rape case. The defendant was proper, acting as his own attorney. During jury selection he had the option to wear civilian clothing instead of his jail clothes. He chose to remain in his jail attire, complete with handcuffs and waist restraints. It came time for him to cross-examine the victim. Understandably, she was very upset before he even started. She was crying and refused to look at him. The defendant's first question went like this. You seem upset. Does it make you nervous to be questioned by the person that raped you? You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. He was found guilty and sentenced to 46 years to life in prison. Edit. Several question about the defendant's motivation about asking that question. He was big guy, but definitely not the sharpest knife in the drawer. My personal take was he tried to ask. Be questioned by the person you said/accused raped you, and flubbed it. I was talking to a seasoned defense attorney about this story and some others. His take on it was some defendants, for whatever reason, commit suicide by court. I knew a guy that was charged with pimping a 17-year-old girl. Mind you, he didn't tell anyone he knew she was 17. I won't get into the morality of pimping, because that's another subject entirely. But his defense was that he wasn't a pimp. He was a rapper and a drug dealer. Like, why the duck would you admit to being a drug dealer? They threw the book at his ass with like 20 to 26 years. New law for pimping minors, statutory rape, etc. Edit. He actually was a drug dealer too, so maybe he thought it would work. Lol. But they clearly had recordings of him from jail, where he was talking to this girl and outing himself like an idiot. I only hit him. He fell off the building himself. / a stupid person who Spartan kicked my uncle off a high school building. I gave testimony as a health professional in a child custody case. The mother wanted to revoke the father's joint physical custody of the 8-year-old girl. The issue was that girl was asked to wipe her father's butt, apply lotion, and wash his genitals. The father's case was that, because he was obese, fatigued, suffering from frequent diarrhea, and taxed to take care of his own hygiene without assistance, it was acceptable for her to do this, as long as she wore gloves, to avoid contracting hepatitis C from him. He also argued that it taught her a lesson about compassion and caring for those unable to do so themselves, and helped them to bond. Truly incredible. Story from Driver's Edition. Guy was in court for killing 2 relatively young gals while drunk. Defendant lawyer claimed that the young girls should be at fault because this man was drunk and the girl was sober. She should have had the reaction time to get out of the way. Pretty stupid defense, but in terms of the worst defense, nothing beats that. Absolutely appalling. Friend of mine once got a ticket for leaving her car standing in the marked off no parking zone in front of a grocery store, which she thought was outrageous because she was just running in to get a pack of smokes. Then she saw how much the ticket was for, something like $120, which she thought was just ridiculous because damn it, she was just running in for a pack of smokes. I mean, come on. How is that worth $120? So her plan was to go to court and contest the ticket and point out to the judge how ridiculous that was and offer to compromise it like maybe $40 because for Pete's sake, she was just running in for a pack of smokes, and let's be reasonable here. Yes, her plan was to haggle with the judge over how much the ticket should be worth. So she goes to court and sits there most of the day waiting for her case to be called. And eventually she gets bored and goes outside to grab a smoke and hang out. And while she's out there, her case is called. She missed the whole thing, didn't even get to try the whole come on. $120? For that? Come on. I'll give you $40 and even that's highway robbery defense on the judge, and got hit for the full value of the ticket plus court costs. I had a guy come into my jail with a robbery charge. He tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding because he just took a girl's money and kept the weed he was supposed to buy her for himself, so at most he was just a shitty boyfriend. He made his situation worse by throwing in, "Did she tell you we're ducking?" She was underage. Aggravated criminal sodomy. The defense attorney said the grape only lasted for a minute. Edit. During closing argument to the jury. It says here you were drinking and driving. No sir. I drank then I drove. A guilty guy. Of course his DNA // was in the alley behind his apartment // Where else would you expect to find your DNA, except where you lived? A domestic abuse case. The husband was the accused. The couple was in their late 70s or early 80s. When asked if he did indeed abuse his wife, the husband started complaining that some 40 years ago the wife pretended to be ill and he had to do the laundry all by himself, as if he expected the judge to just go, "Oh okay, I guess that's cool then." My sister told the judge that the light wasn't that red. Then he said he was going to suspend her license and she said, "But my dad already took it away." It was Independence Day, Your Honor. A day to celebrate the freedoms that our forefathers fought and died for. A day to celebrate what this country is. So yes, Judge, I did do some meth. For freedom. This was in a drug treatment court. Edit. Stop encouraging him. TBH. The judge chuckled and just said, "Don't be stupid." Then the next 5 defendants tried the same thing and the judge threw the book progressively harder. Key here is, get to court early, so your BS excuses first. I took a guy to small claims court. His defense was I didn't have the product, so I couldn't ship it to him. Obviously. The judge was like, "But you took his money?" The guy, "Yay, so I could buy the product and ship it to him." Judge, "Did you do that?" Guy, "Not yet." Judge, "Do you have his money?" Guy, "No, I had an emergency and had to spend it. That was that. I won." Edit. Someone gave me gold. Thanks. This was a very stressful period of my life. I never touched my daughters. I never hurt my daughters. Never would I sexually abuse my daughters. Except that one time at the cabin. Guy became an instant meme in our country/language. Lawyer here, bored at work and not wanting to get started on something, so I've seen some very stupid shit, though I mostly don't do criminal cases, so the stupid shit I tend to see requires a bit of explanation. However, when I was in law school I worked with a group that helped get restraining orders for people in abusive relationships. Family court in Queens was very much a cattle call situation, and it was easy to watch hearing after hearing, which I always found fun. On one particular day there were 2 absolutely amazing hearings. One was a case of 2 gay men. The guy claiming abuse was a huge man. Fat and definitely over 6 feet 4 inches. He was against his tiny partner. At first the magistrate was very incredulous, likely thinking what we were all thinking about the massive size disparity between the two. When the tiny guy got up to speak, he started scolding his larger partner for saying things like that, and at some point, he threw a pen at the bigger man. The bigger guy started to cry, and then the little guy started taunting him. The other involved a man trying to get an ex parte order against his girlfriend, which is relatively rare. It happens, but the vast majority are women getting them against men. This time, however, before his particular hearing could start, a woman came into the courtroom flanked with 2 other women. They were all 3 straight out of central casting for what you'd imagine New York City gang women to look like. They walk in and see the woman's partner seated in the courtroom, though his hearing wasn't up yet. She immediately starts threatening everyone in the room, but especially the magistrate. The magistrate had them escorted out with the bailiffs, who called an extra. About 30 minutes later, the dude's hearing was up. The magistrate basically immediately granted the restraining order and said he'll put a note in for the full hearing about that woman's conduct. I overheard this guy tell the officer that yes, his car license is suspended, but I don't remember the correct terminology. The driving truck one isn't, and neither is his moped license. 3 people and the judge tried to explain that a suspended license means he's lost his privilege to drive in general and altogether. He kept fighting it and saying he wasn't fixing anything cause he's now driving a moped and that license is still okay. He came out with saying it's suspended for several old DUIs. Was sitting in court for traffic violation. The guy in front of me had a speeding ticket. To fight it, he pulled out a large stack of papers, about 3/4 of an inch thick. The stack of papers was a law he pulled out from the 1990s from a different country. The poor judge had to read through. Hands down, it's a tie between every sovereign citizen I've seen in court for a simple traffic violation like displaying expired plates or not registering a vehicle. The defense is always a stupid variation of this court doesn't have jurisdiction because the wrong flag is displayed in the courtroom. Apostrophe. Was in court for a traffic violation in the state of Florida. I'm sitting with a room full of people who are also contesting their tickets. There was a lady who looked like she was a waitress who got up to make her case in front of the judge. She point blank told the judge in front of the officer that ticketed her that her violation was bullshit from a know-it-all cop. The judge then questioned the officer. Your Honor, the defendant's car was going 75 in 35 and ran several stoplights. The judge then proceeded to ask why those charges were unreasonable. Her answer was parody level. I was drinking last night and woke up late. I couldn't lose another job, so I needed to be on time. She ended up paying $500 for wasting the judge's time in addition to her tickets. I watched a friend try a Dewey case. Her client testified that she wasn't drunk while driving and therefore not guilty because she was actually high on meth at the time. My friend put her head down and started hitting her head against the desk. Google tie. I defended a guy on a DUI that jumped into the backseat after he got pulled over and claimed someone else was driving. He was the only one in the car. Judge, why do you think showing up to this young lady's home unannounced after she has made it clear to you she is not romantically interested in you was an acceptable thing to do? Guy I was getting a restraining order against, I just wanted to lick the inside of her dog's mouth. There's lots of backstory to this, but let's just say I had a very creepy stalker. Edit. Thank you everybody for the love and support. Also, thank you to whoever so generously gave me a silver and platinum. You made my week. I'm an animal control officer, and I was seeking permanent possession of this guy's dog after he drunkenly bit, choked, and tormented it. He'd already been charged with animal cruelty, which is a separate case date. This guy was what we call a seasonal transient, meaning he was a part of our homeless population, but he only stayed in the city during the summer. In court, his defense ranged from admitting he had made a drunken mistake to accusing the witnesses during cross-examination, as he represented himself, of being biased against homeless people. His story also fluctuated about why he did this to his dog. First, because she's dog aggressive, and I was disciplining her despite no other dogs ever having been present to a vague she wasn't listening to me. My favorite parts were the following. He tried to argue that, because we had no photos of physical damage, no abuse had occurred. Unfortunately for him, our state cruelty laws don't require an animal to be injured to be considered abused. He had pulled her up by her ears so that her front feet didn't touch the ground and bit her multiple times on the ears and face. In court he defended this by claiming that it was a valid training technique used by Alaskans and many breeders. His proof was a handwritten name and number of a breeder friend of his on a square of paper. He lost. His dog, an absolute sweetheart with huge bat ears, and not an ounce of dog aggression the shelter could find after multiple behavior tests and assessments, was adopted by an older retired couple looking for a good pet to keep them company at home. I saw this go down while waiting for my traffic ticket. Judge, so, you were seen pulling a stop sign out of the ground and throwing it in the river. Accused, yes, sir. J, were you drunk? A, no, sir. J, the ticket says you were intoxicated. A, no, sir. J, okay, let's say I believe you. I will throw out this drunk and disorderly charge. A, thank you, sir. J, but I will have to charge you with the destruction of government property and endangering the public. That comes with at least a year in jail. So I'll ask one more time. Were you drunk? A, yes, sir. Very drunk, sir. In my law graduation I was working as a trainee for the college, lawyer assistant, and I honestly saw that scene. Judge, where were you on Tuesday 11 p.m? Accused, I was working in the street selling pot. Judge, you were doing what? Accused, selling pot. Lawyer looked to him like, WTF. We had a guy in court when I worked in CPS who beat his kid with a belt. In court, he asked the judge if he could take off his belt and demonstrate how hard he hit his kid by using his jacket on the back of a chair. The judge was like, whatevs, go for it. I was expecting him to half-ass it, but the guy wailed on the chair until the bailiff told him that's enough. The entire courtroom was like, holy shit dude. And that's how I got quite possibly the easiest child removal to date. Not that I had any thought I'd lose the case. The pictures were horrific, and that kid will have scars from that beating for life. Close bracket. I was in traffic court and the first guy to go before the judge got pulled over doing some crazy speed, like 140 miles per hour. The judge essentially told the guy to say he wouldn't ever do it again, and that it was a mistake, and in return, the judge would drop the ticket fee and the points on his record. The guy countered with, well, I drive that fast all the time, so I'm really good at it, and I don't think it was dangerous at all, because of how good of a driver I am. Guy cold walked out totally free, but instead got a $2,500 F&E and 2 points on his record.